turning democracy into dictatorship.
And this is why Finkelstein's book is called Wannabe Fascists, because it describes leaders who have followed some of this path of the interwar fascists that we talked about, but they haven't gone all the way, even if they maybe want to. Fascism, for the end, takes place only over here, when democracy ends fully.
Fascism wanted to destroy democracy from within in order to create an extremely racist and totalitarian dictatorship.
Meanwhile, Roger Griffin, one of the top experts in the world on fascism, also says that until democracy is fully wiped out, it's not fascism. Where he disagrees with Finkelstein is that he thinks we should move away from this word altogether, that the F word is not actually useful for
an extremely racist and totalitarian dictatorship.
Meanwhile, Roger Griffin, one of the top experts in the world on fascism, also says that until democracy is fully wiped out, it's not fascism. Where he disagrees with Finkelstein is that he thinks we should move away from this word altogether, that the F word is not actually useful for
an extremely racist and totalitarian dictatorship.
Meanwhile, Roger Griffin, one of the top experts in the world on fascism, also says that until democracy is fully wiped out, it's not fascism. Where he disagrees with Finkelstein is that he thinks we should move away from dystopia. They get rid of their liberal features. And by the way, quick side note, liberal is kind of a confusing word. Here in the United States, we use liberal to describe a leftist-centered political leaning that supports things like social programs, gun control, and higher taxes for the most. But in this case, I mean liberal in the way that it was used in like the 1800s and is used by political scientists today. Liberal, like liberty, a government that ensure individual rights and freedoms, equal protections for everyone, regardless of your group, under the law. You can have a system where there are votes and a parliament and representation, but don't have the liberal features that a liberal democracy does. And Roger Griffin says that this is the thing we should be worried about. That calling it fascism takes our eye off the ball of this new thing, illiberal democracy, where these nationalist leaders are distorting democratic systems to consolidate power, making societies less equal, while still running it like a democracy.
What we have got are new forms of nationalism which are contained within democracy instead of calling for the replacement of democracy.
This was surprising. When I started researching this story, I was under the impression that like all the experts agreed that fascism was back in some form. But they don't.
We are not there yet.
That is until you talk with some other experts who say that it is fascism.
The reason we need to use that term is we find this concept that helps us understand what is going on right now in the third decade of the 21st century. We need to see that history does not repeat itself in the same conditions and the exact same circumstances.
This camp says that our checklists are a distraction, that we're reading too much into the specifics of the 1930s.
You don't need all of that in order to have fascist control and push forward with a fascist project.
But William Robinson says that if you do want a checklist, the most important item on it is actually discipline, where ultra-nationalists become accepted into the mainstream by the elites, like Mussolini and Hitler. This step, where the people in power decide that these nationalist groups that tolerate violence are useful to them.
That's a form of trying to re-legitimate the system.
This view says that in order for fascism to actually succeed, it needs to bring together a specific alliance, a kind of triangulation. First, a vulnerable, receptive population.
This triangulation then brings together the fascist project with a mass social base, where the third dimension is the ruling class. It controls the economy. You see when Trump gets inaugurated for his second term, you see behind him the rolling big tech oligarchs, right behind him, the capital banks of the United States have now come on board.
And finally, you have a view that says that the most important items on this list are these. It's the way the leader talks, the way that they talk about the past and the future.
What fascism does is it promises a return to an order. And the order, of course, didn't actually ever historically exist. You're creating this sort of tabula rasa, the smooth surface on which the fascist story of we were always innocent can then function.
For people like Snyder, fascism starts when politics stops being about the future and starts to become about a mythic story of a glorious past, a humiliated nation, and a promises free birth.
If we could just somehow get the enemy off our screen, off our phone, out of our country, then there would be this harmony to come. There will be love, there will be prosperity, there will be happiness, there won't be conflict anymore because conflict was always brought by the outsider.
And listen, every one of these experts has a different read.
I don't see any major movement in the West that is trying to replace democracy with a totally different system. You can't say that because Hitler came to power in Germany and almost immediately suspended any and all democracy and just became dictatorship overnight, that therefore any fascist project has to follow that same model. There's not one road to fascism.
When you use the list mechanism, you're missing the kind of the historical sensibility you need to actually recognize that thing for what it is. And that is because what we want to do is like we look for the rational core. In my view, that has not proven to be predictive. More predictive would be to look for the fight, the struggle, the enemy, and to dwell on that.
And you're seeing why the experts disagree here. They disagree on how much we should read into the 1930s, how much the word fascism actually matters.
Obviously, 21st century fascism is not going to look like 20th century fascism, but it's going to have that underlying essence in common with the 20th century period.
There are important fascist elements here, and it would be problematic to deny that there are connections to fascism. But if we get too obsessed with fascism, it takes attention away from actually looking carefully at what is happening to democracy. Illiberal democracy, whatever we call it, is in many ways more dangerous than fascism.
Illiberal democracy, I think it's inaccurate, but it's because it's inaccurate, it's sort of pacified. If you think that it is just like illiberal democracy, then you can say, oh, we'll have another election and maybe the liberals will win this. Right?
The question of what is a fascist cannot be answered in simple terms.
I entered this video really wanting clarity on is today fascism or not. Instead, what I have after this long journey are a series of patterns like glorified violence, elites who think violent groups can solve their problems, the destruction of democracy, a myth, a lie, a fake history, a fake promised future. So I guess I now know what fascism isn't. It's not any politics that I don't like.